from the collected works of Shinran. In A Record of Lament of Divergences, Chapter 5, Shinran is quoted. As for me, Shinran, I have never said the Nembutsu even once for the repose of my departed father and mother. For all sentient beings, without exception, have been our parents, brothers, and sisters in the course of countless lives in many states of existence. On attaining Buddhahood after this present life, we can save every one of them. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namandam Namandabs, Namandabs. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, in whatever way you may be viewing this Buddhist Church of Buddhist Church of Oakland virtual Obon service. I'm Ron Kobata, the resident minister of the BCSF, who will be retiring at the end of this month of August. But I've been invited by Reverend Harry Bridge to join you for this year's Buddhist Church of Oakland Obon observance in this very unique form of Zooming or streaming, or I don't know, whatever the technology Reverend Bridge uses for your church. But anyway, it's nice to join you for this annual observance of Obon. I'll begin with a question that I often start memorial services with, where maybe some of you may recall my using this in the past at Oakland, but I'll just review by asking, how would you respond to a question? What in Buddhist tradition happens after we die? And under normal circumstances, when I'm in the Hondo asking this question, it gets very quiet. And it's kind of unexpected question, and usually nobody really has anything to, or not sure how to respond. But some people talk about we go to the Pure Land, we attain nirvana, and so forth. But as I point out, the question itself is not asking about doctrine. It's not questioning what do we believe, so to speak, but what in our Japanese Buddhist tradition happens after we die. So to that question, my response would be, we have memorial services. You know, the various customs and traditions that we're taught to follow when a death occurs in our community or in our family. And so we have a long history of having adopted various funeral rituals that came over with the Issei from Japan. And some of you might recall or even recognize how those traditions have changed over the generations. You know, there used to be a time when we had wake services, these ceremonies before the funeral. And then gradually, because of the changing circumstances and feelings or thoughts, people decided, well, to dispense with the wake service. And then there would be the expression, combined wake and funeral. And then we have the funeral followed by 7 week services, beginning with the first 7th day, the Shonanuka, and then culminating with the 7th day service, the 49th day. And again, due to causes and conditions, different thinking, those traditions began to get somewhat modified or reduced, where the first seventh day would be combined with the funeral. And then the intervening 5 weeks there'd be kind of a pause of no formal rituals, and then kind of culminate or conclude with the 49th day. And again, these traditions, these customs are constantly being revised and reflected upon. Even interesting to note that I was watching NHK World recently. In one of the news segments, it was mentioning how in Japan, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, customs are having to be revised. And they are observing what they call virtual funeral services online, which, by the way, we've been doing here in the BCA. At various temples, they've adopted, using the technology. And so there would be virtual makurakyo and virtual memorials, virtual interments, and so forth. Or sometimes, if it is in person, it's just with a very immediate or a few people present. So these are all examples of the changes that have occurred over the generations of the traditions that we follow. So, due to the circumstances, we are even here observing the Obon service in this virtual form. And who knows, this might set a trend for future changes within how we engage or practice as Shin Buddhists. But that's Buddhism. It's very adaptable because the Dharma itself doesn't change, but the expression, the forms that is taken over the 2,600-year history of this so-called religion. And as it entered different cultures, it adopted new customs, new expressions. And for us, from the Shin Buddhist tradition, whose ancestors came from Japan, for the most part, we've been following traditions that developed in Japan. But here in America, with the interaction with the surrounding community, different cultural ideas and perspectives, we've made adaptations. We start calling ourselves churches. And we come up with titles, reverend, and all of that kind of institutional hierarchy. But again, the Dharma is timeless. It's not subject to changing according to the whims or interests or feelings or the politics of different ideas. The Dharma itself is timeless. The truth, the reality of impermanence, change, that nothing stays the same. And that's what we're all subject to. This finite, fleeting existence is the undeniable, inescapable reality. And within that, though, we are encouraged to or given the opportunity to realize, to wake up to the fact that therefore we do not exist alone. We call it interdependent co-arising. We become what we might be at any given moment by virtue of that dynamic energy of life from which we appear in time and space in a relative form, but this form too will naturally and spiritually change so that from this form we become one with the formless, which is the affirmation of Namo Amida Butsu. Namo is the form, this finite mortal existence that is one with, or we say embraced by, unconditionally, immeasurable light in life, Amida Butsu, So in the saying of Nembutsu, Namu Amida Butsu, we are affirming that sense of being connected, one with that timeless life. And then culturally, we add the perspective of gratitude. So saying the Nembutsu, as Shinran recognized, is not something we use as a prayer, a petition, for the sake of one's parents, one's family, one's community, one's church, one's nation. But it's the affirmation of the fact that we do not exist alone, that we are all part of this universal, immeasurable life. And that's the awakening that hearing the Dharma gives us the opportunity to realize, to experience, not as a belief or as a concept, but as a sense of being, alive. In Japanese, we say, okage-sama de. So that's my SOB story that gives us a sense of being alive within the light and life of Namu Amida Butsu. And that's how I feel we can celebrate the Obon. Even the Obon Odori, which is kind of the highlight of the Obon season, where we come together as a community in celebration, dancing for joy, as we've been taught, is expression of what the Ulambana Sutra, in which Moggallana, the disciple of Shakyamuni, upon the Buddha's advice, practiced dana, selfless giving, and thereby realized, celebrated with joy, his sense of his mother's liberation from the world of hungry ghosts, the insatiable state of wanting me, myself, and I to get more, never satisfied. But the liberation from that condition is to realize the dana that not only we might be able to express, but the dana we are the recipients of, that provides this moment in time and space of awakening. And so that's how I see the Obon celebration, as the opportunity to awake in how we are all soul brothers and sisters. And I know some of you who are kind of more doctrinally focused will say, wait a minute, Buddhists don't believe in souls. Well, I'm not talking about soul as an independent individual spirit or energy into ourselves. But I understand and appreciate the idea of soul as being one with, okay? One together, in which soul stands for sharing one universal life. Sharing one universal life. And in that respect, we are all soul brothers and sisters in which all of our lives matter. And the exclusion or the segregation of any is the exclusion, is the separation of all. So that's the incomplete life. That is the unfulfilled life. That is the contrary to what Moggallana was dancing for joy. So in the extent that we're able to appreciate this spirit, this awareness, is how I see what Shinran Shonin was encouraging, that we're not saying the Nembutsu for the benefit, repose of our own families or ancestors, but for the sake of countless beings, without exception. So with that thought, I'd like to conclude this Buddhist Church of Oakland Born Reflection by quoting the late Congressman John Lewis, in which he expressed the same idea of being soul brothers and sisters in this way. Maybe our forefathers and foremothers all came to this land in different ships, but we are all in the same boat now. No matter whether black, white, Latino, Asian American, Native American, straight, gay, we're one people, one family. We must stay together, not just as an American family, but as a world family, and look out and care for each other. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu.
Next, we will have Gatha Obon. Obon, it's Festival Day. It's on page 72 in the Dharma School Service book, if you have that, but we'll also have the lyrics up on the screen.
Festival day. We will gather friends all along the way and bring fruits and vegetables for the shrine. Like Mogalana many, many years ago. Obon, Obon, it's festival day. All our humble thanks we will here convey to our dearly loved ones who lived in the past, with Nembutsu on our lips. Obon, Obon, it's festival day. Oh, the streets are lined with our lanterns gay, and the wind bells twinkling atop the trees sway to and fro in the breeze. It's festival day.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us for our Obon service, Kangie, Gathering of Joy for 2020. Glad you could join us here online in our virtual service. Unfortunately, we're going to have to keep the temple closed through the end of the year, but please visit BuddhistChurchofOakland.org and also our YouTube channel for services and Dharma messages. And if you want to donate, you can do that through the website, or you can send checks in to the office as always. And so thank you very much, and we'll see you when we start up again in September. Thank you. Bye-bye.